Woohoo, we're being recorded.
Uh-oh. PowerPoint's not opening up. That's not good. There it is. PowerPoint. There we go. Back to here. All right. So where we left off, we were discussing this area right in here. And we came to the conclusion that, yes, this could work as a sort of a back suction economizer system. But building upon that, this has a back suction mixture system. So this lever right here is pilot controlled. This, hang on. There we go. Got to mute Steve there. He's eating his potato chips. All right, so this is pilot controlled. This is the full rich. This is in the full lean position. So let's look at it down here in the full rich position. So we are running around. We are at wide open throttle. We have ambient air coming up through here. Ambient is going to get to this spot right here. And this over here is a less pressure. So some of the air is going to come up through here and through here. And notice this is very big and this is very small. So not a whole lot of air is going to go up through there, but it's going to rob out just a little bit. But most of it is still going to be left to come over this way and go over here and put ambient pressure right in here. A little bit less than ambient, not quite, but a little bit less, as we can represent by that little bit lighter of yellow. Maybe that was on purpose. Maybe it's accident. I don't know, but we're going to say it's on purpose. And so that is going to allow the fuel then to discharge iron through here and out. Now we know that if we want to decrease the amount of fuel that is coming out through here, all we have to do is decrease the air pressure here. If we can add a little bit of suction right here, the air coming out of here is going to decrease. So let's watch what happens. So up here, what happens when when the pilot pulls on this lever, it rotates some discs around in here and it creates a very small hole right here. So I'm going to come down here and so we can keep working down here and pin. And it makes a very small hole right here. Use black. So it makes this much, much smaller. Much, much smaller. So if that's much, much smaller, then we should be able to see the problem that's going on right here. We do have this big old fat pipe with all of this nice yellow air in here, ambient pressure, but it gets to here and only a little tiny bit can come through here. So because only a little tiny bit can get through here, what little bit does get through, a good majority of it's going to go this way and out. And so only a small amount goes this way, or we could even say, let's go to an extreme. There's not even enough air coming through here to satisfy the needs of this. So now, I'm just going to exaggerate a little bit. So now there tends to be a little bit of a suction going on here. So it's actually going to come out this way and it's going to back suction a little bit and it's going to come out this way. Not all of it, because if it was a perfect vacuum, then it would tend to shut this off. But you can see how that's going to create a vacuum here, and that is going to significantly lessen the amount of air coming out of here. And if we limit the fuel coming out of here, limit the fuel coming out of the discharge nozzle, and we have leaned the mixture out. So really, that's all there is to this back suction business here. It's not that hard. You just have to understand that what's going on between these three channels and which way air is flowing. So in this way, I think it's just easier to think of it this way. Only a little bit of air comes through here. So most of it's just going to go down this way. Maybe a little tiny bit is left over, but not enough. So it's kind of putting a vacuum over here and that decreases over here. Now I want to add one more thing to this, because when we get into the lab, and you are messing with these carburetors, at some point, I'm going to ask you, does this mixture control work at idle? Because we talked already about pulling the mixture control inside of the aircraft, and we pull the mixture control inside the aircraft. What should happen is we should see a 50 to 25 RPM rise, and then the aircraft should die. And that tells us we're running a little bit rich of best power at idle. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, when you pull this closed at idle, you can run the airplane all dang day. You're not going to get anything. It will never change. Why? Because at idle, this is closed. And so if that is closed, all that's left here is yellow. And if this is all yellow, then this is all yellow, and this is all yellow, and this is all yellow. And there is nothing about that that is the back suction. It is just multiple yellow passages all going to the same place. And so why doesn't the mixture control work at idle? Because there's no suction on it whatsoever. You have to ask yourself, well, where is the suction? Well, suction's all up here. So this is suction. Everything below it is just ambient pressure. Yeah, it's a little bit less, but not enough to make any difference at all. So does the mixture control work at idle? Nope. Now, I'm going to tell you something funny that not a lot of people realize this. And when we look at this particular carburetor, it was actually an option, an option that a lot of people did not take, to have a mixture control knob installed in the aircraft. So believe it or not, brand new Cubs, brand new Cessna 140s, all the Aronkas, Chiefs, the Champs, all the planes that had this carburetor, they didn't come with a mixture control. They came with a knob and a lever. Sorry, they came with a lever right here, and that lever was safety wired to the wide open position. And so you'd say, well, wait a minute, why is it safety wired to that? And say, well, it doesn't work anyway. I mean, I've heard that so many times. It doesn't work anyway. Why doesn't it work? Well, it doesn't work. Let me show you something. They get in the airplane, they'd start it up, they go to idle and pull it back and go, well, look, it doesn't even kill the engine. It does nothing. Oh, okay. Well, I can see your point there. It doesn't work. Well, it does work. It just doesn't work in the idle position. And I'm going to show you guys this. So we're going to be able to put one of these carburetors on our ground power unit. You're going to actually install it, and I'm going to have you put it in wide open throttle. I'm going to say, or not quite wide open, because it's kind of hard on our little ground power unit. But if you take one of these things and put it in lean, so we'll go to idle, go to full lean, and nothing is going to change. And nothing should change, because now you know the secret. All this stuff is down here on the bottom side. So of course it won't change. But if you leave it in lean, this position up here, and start to open the throttle, it is really going to have a hard time accelerating. And you're going to get to a point where it's just going to start coughing and choking and dying. And why does it cough, choke, and die? Because you have changed this to wide open. You have blocked this off, and all this blue now starts pulling out here, because this is all blue. It's all suction. Blue is suction. So since this is all blue and it starts sucking the air right out of here, and the whole carburetor starts coughing and wheezing because nothing gets out of here. And it actually does work, and it'll backfire and then die and stop. So it does work.
Wait, hey, Kevin, I have a question.
Yes.
So this process, it doesn't raise or lower the flow, right? It just changes the pressure.
Correct.
Okay.
Good question.
So how would you set the idle mix if it doesn't?
Oh, wow. That is such a good question. Okay. So everybody got that. How do you set the idle mixture on this? Well, I'm going to tell you two things. One, out in the field, it's not really set. The way we set it out in the field is, remember the formula I told you? You screw the mixture control all the way in, and you back it out 1 1/2 turns. So right here it is, screw it all the way in, and then back out 1 1/2 turns. And I'm going to say 90% of the time, absolutely works just fine. And then what would happen out in the field is if somebody would come to you and say, or you do an annual and you look at their spark plugs and you ask them, do you do a lot of idling? Yeah, I do. And, well, you're running pretty rich at idle. Let me just screw that in and maybe a 1/4 turn for you and see if that helps you out a little. And that's all we'd really do. These carburetors aren't, they're they're so easy to deal with, and they're really not very temperamental in that respect. So that's what you do. Now, if you really wanted to get precise, and I will ask you to get very precise when you set yours up, because we can. When you're working on the ground power unit we have at school, you don't have your head and shoulders inches away from a spinning propeller. So I don't like to adjust carburetors on a running engine. So that's why I kind of tend to follow this 1.5 out. And if it works, just leave it. If it accelerates nicely, leave it. If it doesn't, then adjust it as I need to. But on the ground power unit, because there's not a safety issue, you can actually do this. So what you would do is you're going to watch your RPM gauge, RPM. Okay, so if you set the throttle arm at one spot and you don't change this, if you don't change your throttle position at all, you can actually change the speed with that by making it richer or leaner. So if you're running really rich and you get to best power, you're going to see the RPM start to rise because you got to best power. So think about it. You're just changing the mixture. You will get better power out of it. Now, because of that, so let's see. So you'd want about 25 to 50 RPM, rich, best power. All right, so where is best power? So you could take this thing and we could say, okay, we're going to go all the way out. All right. And we'll start it up and it's going to run, because it's all the way out, really rich. And you're going to screw it in and you're going to watch the RPM, laser pointer here. You'll watch the RPM start to go up and up and up and up. And pretty soon the RPM is going to stop at a certain point, and that is your best power. So if you were screwing it in, all you have to do is screw it back out until it drops 25 or 50 RPM. And that's it. But now you can't change the throttle arm. If you change the throttle arm, that's something different, right? That's changing the throttle with the changing RPM with the throttle. That doesn't mean anything, right? So again, you hold the throttle in one position, lock it in place, and you pull this out as far as it goes, and that's running really rich. Screw it in, and as you screw it in, you'll go up, 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 best power. Now, if you keep screwing it in, it is going to start decreasing in RPM. Why? Because now you're going lean of best power. So again, it's all the way out. You're going to screw it in. You're going to go up RPM, up RPM, up RPM. You're going to get to a peak. That peak is called best power. Now unscrew it the other way, richen it 25 to 50 RPM. You can do the same thing with our ground power unit, watching the manifold pressure gauge. Now this one is going to sort of hurt your head a little bit. So we can do the same thing with the manifold pressure gauge. That's the MAP gauge, manifold absolute pressure. But I want you to think about it, what's happening here. If I don't move the throttle, and I adjust the mixture so that the RPM gets higher. All right, everybody follow me? If I can adjust the RPM by simply adjusting the mixture, then the engine is going to run faster without changing the throttle. If I can move the engine faster without changing the throttle, am I going to get more vacuum or less vacuum?
Less vacuum.
You're getting the same vacuum.
Remember, the engine's an air pump. If I make the air pump go faster, am I going to get more vacuum or less vacuum?
More vacuum.
It's going to suck more. Okay, this is the absolute opposite of a way an engine most people think of engines, because they think of manifold as being attached to the throttle arm. And if I open the throttle, manifold pressure goes up and RPM go up. Okay, but that's if you're changing things with the throttle valve. I'm not changing it with the throttle valve. I got to stress that the throttle valve, the restriction is staying the same. So if the restriction is staying the same and I can somehow make the air pump go faster, that means the manifold pressure, the suction, there's going to be more suction, which means manifold pressure goes down. That hurts you? All right. So if I don't move the throttle plate and I screw this all the way out, the RPM is going to be pretty low. and the manifold pressure is going to be a little bit high because the pump's not running, right? Okay, so as I screw it in and I get to best power, I'm going to watch the RPM climb. I'm going to watch the manifold pressure go down because the air pump's moving faster. The restriction stayed the same. And so the suction gets greater. And so this is going to bottom out as this peaks out. So this will peak at best power. This will bottom at best power. And then if I screw it back out a little bit, it's going to get richer, which means this is going to go down a little bit and this will go up a little bit. And I tell you that for a couple reasons. One, I want you to understand the correlation between manifold pressure and RPM when I'm adjusting it with this. And two, our RPM gauge on our ground power unit is not very sensitive, but the manifold pressure really, really is. So you can do the same thing with the manifold pressure gauge, and it's actually much easier. So now let's take this one step further. So just so you understand, I have the mixture completely set, and I get in the aircraft and I open up the throttle. Everybody knows when I open the throttle, the RPM is going to go up, right? Also, the manifold pressure goes up. So the manifold pressure goes up and RPM go up if I change things with the throttle plate. But if I'm just playing with the mixture and not the throttle plate, then they go backwards from each other. Because again, you're running the air pump faster without changing its restriction. No. Did I lose you guys? I mean, did you guys just log off at that point?
We just have to wrap our heads around it.
That feels good. It makes sense to me.
Well, it's so simple. How could it not? All right. So honestly, if you can grasp what I just said, and we can go back a little bit and you can understand why the mixture works, how this back suction mixture works, how it's working in this position, and why it does not work and idle because the throttle's closed. If you can wrap your head around all of that, then I'm going to say you're 90% there with carburetors. You've got 90% of it, and that's doing good. So that is wonderful.
So Kevin,
yeah.
so when we adjust, we don't touch the plate, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
To a point. Now, in real world operations, sometimes you have to readjust the idle speed because it was so out of whack that you got to get the two sort of where they need to be before you can actually make final adjustments. You know, and in other words, you may have to, but in a perfect world, no. If they're close enough, then you don't just adjust the throttle plate at all. But at the same time, okay, so let's just say I don't adjust the throttle plate, and I do exactly everything just right. I adjust it, and I see that peak, and then I back it back out, so I'm 50 to 25 rich of the peak, and I look at it, and it's idling at 800 RPM. Well, that's too fast. I want it to slow down. So all I really have to do is just then adjust the screw that holds the valve, reset my speed a little bit. Because it does happen. Once you get to best mixture, you might watch that RPM go up too high. And then you want to do an RPM adjustment with the idle speed screw.
Okay.
And I have changed the program around when I started teaching it to, some people are angry that I use a lot of gas, but that's not my problem. I have you do it on this carburetor, then I have you do it on another carburetor. So there's unfortunately a bit of a line getting into the ground power unit, but it really gives you great experience on all of these carburetors and the ability to adjust them both. And you can see how it's done and experiment with how they work. Okay, let me see. We'll go to notes. All right, so that was the back suction type. It's back suction, and that is back suction. The Stromberg, that's what we've been looking at right now, is the Stromberg. I spell it with a U this time. I think that's the NAS 3. That's the one we use that. Uses this, and that's the one we just looked at. And that's the one you're actually going to use in lab. All right. So 23. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to write some notes on this for you. So let's see, suction. I'm trying to use words that make sense and not be scientific about it. Suction is applied. Suction applied to, so I'll make that to the fuel bowl. To the fuel bowl from venturi. It's actually above the venturi a little bit. When open, the fuel bowl is vented to atmosphere. And I should say when open. I should say when full rich. Full rich. That makes a little more sense than open. When full rich, the fuel bowl is vented to the atmosphere, more or less. Okay. When in, we'll say full lean, because really this doesn't have an idle cutoff. We just proved that doesn't work. There's no such thing as idle cutoff. All we can do is full lean on this one. So when full lean, bowl or fuel bowl is vented, is not vented to atmosphere. And fuel flow stops, or nearly stops flowing out of discharge nozzle. I'm being a little generic to some of these things. Maybe I shouldn't. I'm going to leave it right there. I think that explains it better, and anything else is just going to confuse it. I will throw this one out at you because I said it. So sometimes wired, sometimes wired in full rich position. I'm going to tell you, if you have like a Piper Cub or something like that, I don't see a problem with it being wired in full rich. Number one, that's the way it came from the factory. The mixture was an option. And most people who own a Piper Cub, they never make it more than 1,500 feet off the ground. It just, those little airplanes are fun just for have the doors and the windows open and putt around at about, most people I knew never went over 500 feet. So I definitely never bother with trying to work one of these at that low of an altitude. So I wouldn't even try and talk them out of it. Okay, so another type of mixture system is the needle type. The needle type. I'm going to add this right now. So needle valve or needle valve type. I don't like calling it a needle. I actually like calling it a valve type. So, all right, who has this one? Marvel Shebler uses this one. Remember, Marvel Shebler is also known as Facet or Precision Aeromotive. They were bought and sold a lot. So it is a very simple system, probably the simplest one. And this by far is the most common. So it uses a valve to control fuel flow to main discharge nozzle. And ABC can be used to fully cut off fuel flow. All right, so like I said, it's absolutely just a valve. We could go over here and now, let me see. Looking for a good picture we can use on this one.
slow down, says Janet.
Oh, I should go back to this anyway. Why is it not doing it? There we go. All right. I will take this opportunity to slow down. Sometimes I worry you guys get a little too hung up on the notes and not enough about the content. Just be careful with that.
So what's everybody having for dinner tonight?
Lay's.
I'm having some cactus with some pig. So that's going to be good.
Okay, this is a Marvel shoveler. This item right here is the actual valve and is attached to this arm, which is the actual mixture control arm. So this valve right here, let's see how well Songman did for me here. No, I don't see it. I want you to notice a couple things. One, this is actually speedometer cable / a flexible tube. It goes back and forth. If you don't know what a speedometer cable is, how about a doorstop? It's doorstop technology. You can take it, bend it over and let it go. It goes poing, but it doesn't make a cool noise like a doorstop does. And I'm looking for the float bolt insides. Nope, don't have one. So that little valve, I'm gonna try and do it with my drawing because I have a nice drawing, actually goes down. This is probably gonna make a mess of everything. It actually goes down and fits in a socket that is right above the main discharge. So if I drew it over here, a little bit nicer, we have the fuel bowl, and the fuel bowl comes out, and we'll put the main jet right here, and this kind of rises up a little bit, and then that little speedometer cable thing with the plunger goes right into here, and it acts like it is a valve. The opening is actually right over here on the side, and so it is a valve. And if we look at some of these cool pictures, let's see, going the wrong way, you can see how it's cut out, half of it. And that's what makes the valve part of it. And there you go. So it's cut out like that. And so what it does is it actually, in full rich, this opening right here, the opening is bigger or equal to the main jet. And as we lean it, it starts to close off the entrance and it becomes smaller than the main jet. So in effect, what you're doing is you are just making the main jet size smaller and smaller, but instead of making it here, it's like an adjustable main jet here. So you just make the main jet smaller. So this opening gets smaller, less fuel goes through here, less fuel goes out. You get to a point where you pull it all the way and it just shuts off all the fuel and nothing goes through. And that's all there is to it.
Question, why is it flexible?
Okay, the reason why it's flexible is, let me see, I'll go back here, like that, is that this shaft is actually mounted to the top of the carburetor, and this has to line up with the hole in the bottom of the carburetor. And so rather than making this a 100% precision, has to nail it dead nuts inside of this piece, they make it flexible. So that way, if there's any misalignment, it fits in just fine. Now that's all fine and well until you get to realize that the chances of you missing the hole that this goes into is very, very high, very high. I've seen it once, I've seen it 20 times. So what you end up with then
It could be all the way out. Huh?
is, yeah, so let me erase all this. So here we got this piece right here where it's supposed to go into, oops, and it actually comes down and you miss and it goes right here. All right. So when you go to full lean, what does it do?
Full rich.
Yep. Doesn't change anything.
Nothing else.
And it really sucks. Somebody overhauls the carburetor for you. You get it back. You bolt it on the engine. You go to set the idle mixture. And so first thing you have to do is see where they've set it. So you pull the mixture control knob all the way back, and the engine just keeps running and running and running. And do you realize at that point, you know exactly what it is. And so you have to now disassemble the carburetor and take this little thing and actually make it go down inside the hole where it's supposed to. So when I overhauled these things, when I put them together, that's the thing that I'm paying the most attention to, is using a flashlight and trying to watch it to the last possible second, and then put it together. And then this is probably terrible, and I shouldn't teach you this kind of stuff, but I actually just blow into the carburetor with my mouth, which is disgusting if everybody does it, I guess. But fuel is a wonderful, I'm sure, de-corona viruser.
Corona.
And then you take and move the mixture control level back and forth. And if it's a quiet environment, you can hear a pitch change. And so when you get the pitch change, you know you did well. And so you put it back together. Yeah. All right. So that is the needle or the valve type. It's just that simple. I can't make it any more complicated if I wanted to, I don't think. Oh, I bet I could if I really tried. All right. This is a type that I'm going to tell you about. I've never seen this type. It sounds cool. The airport type. And I know that I've got a PowerPoint over here somewhere of this one. Go up. It's in black and white. That's how old it is. Let's see. Airport. Here we go. Airport. Nope. There we go. Airport type. So what we have over here, this is the throttle, main discharge nozzle, venturi, and everything is normal except for what we see on the right side of this. So if this is closed, it's an absolutely normal carburetor. But by opening this up, we introduce air that bypasses the venturi. If you bypass the venturi, then the venturi, the air measuring device, never gets to measure the air. So it's measuring less, and it's thinking, well, we've got less air, therefore you need less fuel. So it just creates a calibrated leak off to the side to allow less fuel to come out of the discharge nozzle. You've never seen anything like this one. I think this is a very old Stromberg type, but I've never worked on one like that. But that's all there is to that. So airport type, let me see airport type. A valve opens. Valve opens and closes and closes. I'm going to say past the venturi, or yeah, we'll go past venturi. I don't actually like that. I'll have to think about how to change that. We'll say when open, air, we'll say this, bypasses venturi and leans mixture, leans the fuel air mixture, and when closed, no air bypasses venturi. I think that's better than what I actually have here. So there. All right, let me know.
So it
when
doesn't
you're-
get richer, right? It just, well, it's just the same.
It's richer and leaner. Oh, when it's closed, no air bypasses, and it just runs in the normal.
Gotcha.
All right, you got caught up there, everybody?
Almost.
Almost. All right. How about now? Maybe Janet would be caught up if she'd quit spending all of her time typing to me. It's a joke.
She said almost not.
I can see her. Well, I can see her writing. All right, Zach, you know your mic is on.
Am I talking? Was I making noise?
No, I could just see. I could visually see it.
Oh, I have a mic mute on my headset, so
Nice. Okay. No, you weren't making any noise. Okay. I'm going to go through a bunch of slides with you guys, and we're just going to talk about some stuff for a while. So feel free to jump in. Maybe few things that I may have forgotten and stuff. I do love this slide because I like the fact that it calls that little difference between the discharge nozzle and here as the fuel metering head. I don't really think I see that in many of the books. What I've got here is a combination of stuff that I found laying around my office when I took over. These are actually transparencies that I scanned on my scanner at home. So if I made for old overhead projectors, but you should be able to really identify everything as we go through these, and what we can't identify, we're going to go through. So anyway, fuel metering head right there. So we talked about a couple things. What did we have on there? We had fuel metering force. What was fuel metering force? If anybody remembers? How about
head
fuel
pressure? No.
Fuel metering force is air pressure, right? And I hate that. I
one
would call
pressure
that,
divided by another pressure.
yeah, it's two air pressures, and I don't like that. They didn't ask me though, and it really is going to hurt later when we actually get into pressure carburetors, and fuel metering force is actually fuel pressures. And so it would have been a lot helpful if fuel metering force was the difference between fuel, but I would love to call it that, but I didn't. So fuel metering force is the difference between the air pressure between the float chamber and the discharge nozzle. So, all right, so I got that one, but I like the fuel metering head, but I don't see that done very much. All right, we talked about mixture controls. Didn't show, some of these slides are new. So this is obviously the back suction mixture control. And this is maybe I should have shown this at the time, far more simplistic. This is a downdraft carburetor in this time, and that's fine. And you just turn it around. It doesn't matter which way it goes. You have the air, the venturi, then the throttle. And we did the opposite. We just had air, venturi, and then throttle the other way. But what you can see here is that the mixture control valve is simply going to regulate how much air pressure is in here. And so if we go right back to what we saw before, let's see, if we let blue be suction, we have suction right here. And if we let yellow represent air pressure, can you see yellow okay? I should make it something different, huh? We'll let green be air pressure. So this is green. You can probably see that better. So if this is green is air pressure, when we start limiting the amount of air pressure that comes in, we get less air pressure. And remember, this is blue is vacuum, and it's going to steal some of that. So it's going to go this way. And it's stealing some of it. So we have less green available to come down on the fuel pressure. If we have less that means that there's less pressure here, which means there is, here's my discharge nozzle. So it means that the difference of air pressure or the fuel metering force between here and here is that as the fuel metering force gets closer and closer together, the net result is going to be zero and you have no fuel coming out. So by controlling, so it's again, back suction, we've already seen that, you see. This represents an idle cutoff. Good luck with that. Do I want to go with that? So what they're showing, oh, this one would work down here, I'm sorry. So this actually would work because, what do I have here, blue? Right now with the engine operating, remember it's upside down. So this is going to be massive amount of suction right here. And if I have a massive amount of suction right here, this is also a massive amount of suction. And it is going to suck all of the air out of here, which is going to cause no fuel. In fact, it's enough of a suction, it's actually going to pull everything this way and start sucking air down this way. So forget about fuel going out the discharge nozzle. It's going to start sucking air, and we'll have little bubbles coming up this way because it's sucking so hard. So would that carburetor work? Absolutely would work, but not to run an engine. So that would be our idle cutoff position. We had the needle type mixture, which really is this exact same thing as I said is the valve type, because in the Stromberg, I'm sorry, the Marvel Shoveler. Yes, I want to say Marvel Shoveler. In the Marvel Shoveler, this rotates. And in this drawing, it doesn't rotate, it goes up and down. It's the exact same concept. It's controlled. See, now it's not connected to the throttle. It's completely and totally separate. As I pull back on this, it is going to lift this lever. And as this lever goes up, it will allow fuel to come out, go to the main metering jet, discharge nozzle out. What is this? My air bleed right here. And this is my idle chamber right here, I believe. So the only thing with this one is it's working backwards. If the pilot's over here, and this is, I guess, really worth noting. If the pilot is right here, you should have a cap on, right? Now it looks like a captain, actually. If the pilot's over here, then this way is considered rich, and this way is lean. And that is incorrect. So it means the pilot has to be over here, because this way, pull back is lean and forward is rich. And that's the way all airplane controls are. Forward is go fast, full, or on. And so we'd want it on, and pull back to go lean. We talked about the airport type, if you guys remember that. So this is a mixture whereby if this is closed off, then no air gets through, and it's just a normal everyday carburetor. You have no mixture issues whatsoever. It's running full rich. And as we open this up, air, instead of going here, bypasses, goes through here, so the Venturi does not measure it, and it drops the suction down. If it drops the suction, then less comes out of the discharge nozzle, and thus leaning out the whole mixture. I did not talk yet about an AMC automatic mixture control. That is in my notes to come. So I guess we'll just skip it. We talked about economizer systems. This was the dual passageway needle type. And remember that this needle, unlike the mixture control, this is an economizer, so it has to be automatic. Economizers are automatic. So it's tied into the throttle. And whenever the throttle is opened, at the last little bit, so it's going to be, this is going to be closed until we get to about 75% power or something. So above 75% power, this goes up, gives me a secondary passage against across another main metering jet, if you will. So I have two main metering jets, more fuel. When I go to 65% power, this is going to come down and block it off. So now I just have one main metering jet. All right. Did we do this one? Yes, this was the double piston type, where in this position we're lean. We're blocking off any fuel from going this way, so it comes around this way through this main metering jet and up, and then over here is the full rich. Remember, it's economizer, so it opens on its own, attached to the throttle. So as it comes up, we have a secondary passage and a secondary discharge nozzle, allowing fuel to go up and through. Yeah, if I could just make it move. There we go. All right, we talked about the automatic, or the pressure, sorry, pressure operated, which used the dash pot, which is a sort of shock absorber, if you will. I have to tell you this is stupid. When I was in A&P school, there was a teacher, rest his soul, because he's not with us anymore, who was not well loved. And I remember he told this really stupid, he got really angry with somebody in my group because he called the instrument panel the dashboard. And he kind of really went off on him, as this guy was known for doing. And he was yelling at him saying, "Do you even know what a dashboard is?" And, you know, my best answer was no. I don't know what a dashboard is. Why don't you tell me? So he explained to me, and I have no idea if this is true or not, that dashboard goes back to the days of horse and buggy. And it was the thing that you put your feet down on this board, but in front of it, there was this board in front that was called the dashboard. And apparently dash is some reference to horse urine. And so every time I see this thing dash pot, I imagine it filled with horse pee, which maybe it is. And that's why they call it that. And so he said the dashboard was originally invented to keep horse pee from splashing up on your shoes. That's why, since aircraft were never in fact pulled by horses, there is no dashboard in aircraft. That's why it's called an instrument panel. And in a car, it's called dashboard. So yeah, now you know. And I have no idea if there's any truth whatsoever to what he said, but that is a true story. So, all right. So remember that this is vented to the manifold pressure. And as the throttle is opened, manifold pressure increases. An increase in pressure will cause this bellows to smash down, the potato chip bag theory. When that smashes down, this goes down, opens up a secondary port, allowing fuel to go up and through here. It's really the exact same thing as the needle type we just looked at a minute ago, but instead of just having a simple lever, we've decided to make it complicated and hooked up with air pressure. And then when we go closed throttle, then the pressure up here in the manifold is going to decrease, and a decrease in pressure is going to cause this to expand. And as it expands, this is going to close off. This is the stuff you're going to get out of the Marvel Shovelers. This is actually a Marvel Shovelers drawings, and you can see they get a little complicated. Also, not only are they complicated, they're not completed. There's another passage right here that they never colored in. So, so this was the back suction type economizer, whereby there was, I'll go back to my laser pointer. There is a suction that is created through here at a part throttle with, and if you actually look at them, and Marvel doesn't talk about it at all. I can't find any textbooks that talk about it. It was really kind of left to my own devices, that really at a part throttle, this kind of aims, the throttle plate sort of aims at this, creating a lower pressure. And also we know that it's lower pressure above a throttle plate. So that lower pressure puts a little back suction down in here. And then that back suction helps to decrease the pressure in the float chamber, which again, decreases the output. Well, that pretty much takes us to, I think, break time. I don't have my clock on my computer right here because I got everything open. Discard. Yep. So that's a good place to stop. Go have some lunch, and I will see you back here a bit later.
Thank you very much.
Does anybody need for me to leave this open? No.
Hey,
Okay.
Kevin.
Yep.
No.
Before you go, I got a question.